A7, a top one. And pick up, please.
Yeah, unbelievable, guys. There's something wrong with this car, mate. It's the worst it's ever been.
There is a 10-second penalty for Verstappen, so a P6.
Can a simple radio conversation destroy the relationship between a legend of the F1 and the most historical sport of sport? Today we are going to crumble Hamilton's most revealing words after the GP of Spain 2025. And believe me, they are not just complaints. This could redefine his future in Ferrari. The 2025 Grand Prix was not only one more career in the Formula One calendar. It was a dramatic turning point in the alliance between Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari. What months ago sold as a legendary union between the most laureate pilot in history and the most emblematic sport of sport, today is going through a crisis as visible as uncomfortable. In a sport where nuances count more than words and where each gesture can be interpreted as a strategic message, Hamilton's radios in Barcelona offered a revealing portrait of the growing tension inside the Red Garage. To understand why this weekend was so symbolic, it is necessary to look back. Ferrari came from a pre-season with ups and downs and initial races that had not been conclusive enough to determine if the SF-25 was really a competitive car or simply one more evolution of a saga of problematic cars. In that context, Spain represented the first true fire test to measure the development of the car in a technical circuit, medium-high aerodynamic load, and with characteristics that exposed both the strengths and the weak of the chassis and the power unit. Since Friday, Hamilton's discontent became evident, and what could have been a simple technical observation soon became a series of exchanges with Riccardo Adami that revealed more than simple grip problems. The phrase, "that was bad," broadcast after a seemingly reasonable batch, was not accidental. Hamilton did not refer only to a punctual error or an unsatisfactory return. He was doing a global evaluation of the package, the general equilibrium of the car, of his response to the track conditions. And he did it with the frankness of someone who no longer feels that his observations are being interpreted as urgent. The most worrying thing was that, upon receiving Adami's response about the general degradation of the soft tire and the lack of grip shared by other teams, Hamilton was not relieved. On the contrary, he immediately focused on comparing yields with other compounds, asking for hard tires, looking for clues that revealed if there was something structurally wrong in the car or if the problem was in the Ferrari approach. That incessant context search, that desire to validate its technical impressions with real data, is typical of a pilot who does not fully trust the feedback he receives from his wall. And that, in Ferrari's environment, is a dangerous warning. During the second free session, the situation climbed at alarming levels. Hamilton described the car as notableable. For any other pilot, that would already be a severe criticism. But coming from Hamilton, who has managed to tame unpredictable cars in the past with brilliant results, that statement implies that SF-25 is not only ineffective, but that breaks the bond of trust between man and machine. That phrase does not refer only to bad technical behavior. He speaks of disconnection, of lack of positive sensitivity, of a platform that does not respond to the pilot's instincts. And when a pilot of that caliber says that he did not have fun, the seriousness of the matter goes beyond the emotional. It means that the car does not allow to attack, it does not allow to explore the limit, it does not allow to compete. And in Formula One, that amounts to being out of combat. And here the deepest crack of all opens. Language. Not the technician, but the emotional. Hamilton is a teacher in communication with his team. His career is full of examples where his radios have been both diagnostic tools and motivation resources. But in Barcelona, his words were flat, lacking the energy that usually transmit even in difficult times. There was frustration, yes, but there was also resignation. That tone devoid of enthusiasm is the one that worries the most, because it is not just about improving an adjustment or changing a strategy. It's about recovering faith. And when that faith is lost, it is no longer a matter of tense by return. It is a matter of identity. This first day in Spain showed that the conflict between Hamilton and Ferrari is not superficial. It is not limited to the tuning of a car or the performance in classification. It is a background disagreement. It is the collision between a pilot that demands excellence and a team that, at least for now, cannot offer it. And in that disappointment space, true threats to internal harmony begin to appear. Because in Ferrari it is not enough to have talent. You have to have a vision, fast reaction, and, above all, cohesion. None of those qualities were reflected in the radios of Barcelona. When Sunday arrived, the attention was no longer only on the performance of the SF-25. Now, all eyes pointed to Lewis Hamilton's body language, to the tone of his voice by radio, and above all, to what he did not say. Because in Formula One, sometimes silence weighs more than words. The race began in mixed conditions, with a threat of latent rain and temperatures that complicated the ideal operating window of the tires. The beginning was relatively clean, but the cameras focused from the beginning in Ferrari number 44. Hamilton, which left from a half-table position, had the difficult task of tracing. And from the first curves, it became clear that he did not have the tool for it. The SF-25 again showed its tensile limitations at low speed and braking stability, two crucial aspects in a circuit such as Barcelona. But the most revealing was not what the car did or stopped doing. It was the absence of Hamilton's typical vocal energy on the radio. During almost the first half of the race, his communication was minimal, measured, almost automated. The phrases were short, the instructions were functional, but lacking the proactive tone that has characterized Lewis for years. And for those who closely follow their career, that is a red alarm. Because Hamilton is not a pilot who disconnects easily. It is someone who usually leads, motivate, push the team even when the panorama is adverse. His silence was then a passive protest, a message of disappointment to the team. In the middle of the race, a new opportunity was presented to evaluate its interaction with the wall. Ferrari, as has been his custom in recent years, made a questionable strategic decision. He extended the first Hamilton stint more than necessary, waiting for an optimal window that never arrived. When the British finally entered boxes, he had already lost valuable land in front of his direct rivals. And on the radio, the answer was simply understood. Without irony, without reproach, but also without enthusiasm. That cold acceptance, without emotional nuance, may seem professionalism, but can also be interpreted as resignation. And resignation, in a champion, is a devastating sign that at the end of the race, there was no explosion of frustration, nor lit speeches. Only a dry phrase said with a mixture of helplessness and dignity, "We need to talk." Those 4 words, barely captured in the radio frequency, are more significant than any technical analysis of the car. Because they reveal what is to come. A conversation would be, probably by closed doors, where it will be defined whether there is a will within Ferrari to rebuild trust or if the relationship is condemned to slow but safe erosion. And that closure without fuss, without theatrical statements, is perhaps the most painful for Tifosi. Because it is not a pilot who complains because he wants to win. It is a champion who sees how time escapes, how every poorly managed race is another lost opportunity. And the most serious, how the team that promised to be his new home, his new rebirth, is repeating structural errors of the past that other illustrious names of the F1 also suffered silently. This Grand Prix has left more than a defeat. He has left scars. Internal scars that are not seen on the podium, but that way at each engineering meeting, at each strategy meeting, and above all, in the motivation of those who have arrived to transform Ferrari, but now begins to wonder if Ferrari is willing to be transformed. At the end of the 2025 Grand Prix, not only the results of a race were defined. The true fractures of a relationship that, until recently, was promoted as the great rebirth of Ferrari's modern history were exposed. Lewis Hamilton's arrival to the Italian team was not just a media bomb. It was a symbolic movement. The champion who had won everything with Mercedes joined Maranello's house to write a last glorious chapter in his career. But that chapter, for the moment, seems more a warning novel than an epic of redemption. The radio after the race in Spain encapsulates everything that is wrong in this project. It is not just the punctual frustration of a pilot after a bad day. It is a sequence of signals, of constant messages throughout the weekend, which are weaving a weird narrative. Hamilton is not raising his voice by despair. He is doing it from the deep knowledge of what implies working in a winning environment. He knows when a car needs work. He knows when the command structure does not respond. And above all, he knows when his warnings fall in a broken bag. Because we are not talking about circumstantial mistakes here. We are talking about poorly managed decisions, poorly designed strategies, broken communication at key moments. And what makes it more worrying is that Ferrari is not facing this crisis as an opportunity for transformation, but with a passivity that baffles. In a sport where second decisions make the difference between victory and oblivion, each inefficient conversation, each bad order, each ignored message is a sentence. And this is where the situation acquires greater gravity. Because Ferrari is not only risking career results, he is risking the credibility of the project. When a pilot like Hamilton, whose story is built on operational excellence and obsession with detail, begins to show signs of emotional detachment, is not a problem. It is a background problem. And that type of problem is not fixed with an aileron improvement or a software update. It requires a structural transformation. It requires leadership. It requires listening. The final phrase of Hamilton, "We need to talk," was not accidental. It was a attention call. It was a cutting line between what was the initial illusion and what begins to become a fight against frustration. Those words synthesize the dilemma. Is there in Ferrari the will to face their ghosts and evolve? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a painful repetition of historical errors that have already moved in the past to names like Alonso, Vettel, even Schumacher in his last years? What happened in Barcelona is much more than a bad result. It is a warning. And time in Formula One does not forgive. Every lost weekend is an opportunity that does not come back. And if Ferrari does not change his course now, he runs the risk that his most ambitious bet in years, Lewis Hamilton, ends up being just another victim of a structure that still does not learn from his mistakes. Because in this sport he does not win the most promises. The fastest correct when you know that something is going wrong. And right now, Ferrari does not need only technical improvements. You need to look in the mirror and decide once and for all if you are prepared to live up to your pilot, or if you are going to lose it.